Before today's video, I'd like to invite you to An Evening with Konstantin Kisin. He's the author of An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West and the co-host of the hugely popular Trigonometry podcast. He'll be touring Australia in February and March, giving a fresh perspective that's both enlightening and engaging. To book your tickets, head to our website, cis.org.au, or click the link in the description. I'll see you there.
There was a vile rapist, male rapist, who suddenly identified as a woman and wanted to be put in a women's prison, expected to be housed in a women's prison, having been found guilty of these atrocious crimes. And suddenly the penny dropped with a lot of people. This is the reality of gender self-identification.
It caused trouble for the Chief Minister, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, yes. It led to her resignation.
How Woke Won is a book written by my guest, Joanna Williams. Joanna, how did it win? And what is it?
Well, to answer the second question first, I would describe woke as being really an outlook upon society that insists upon grouping people according to their identity, according to their skin colour or their sexuality or their gender, and ranking people according to presumed oppression or privilege, and then setting about levelling the playing field in sometimes quite authoritarian ways. I think, for me, quite crudely, that's what I mean by woke, but it can have some very horrible consequences.
What?
I think just the whole fact of grouping people on the basis of skin colour, for example, really re-racialises society. It moves us beyond a colourblind approach to racism, where people were supposed to be, if not always in practice, judged by the content of their character rather than the colour of their skin. And it really insists that we do start judging people according to their skin colour all over again. And I think that leads us to racism.
A kind of new racism?
Absolutely, yes. And a new sexism, a new homophobia.
How does that work by new homophobia?
Well, one of the central planks of wokism, I would say, is transgender ideology. And that's the belief that our biological sex, our genitalia, to be crude, are irrelevant, and really what determines our gender is something kind of mystical in our brain, that we all have this inner sense of a gender identity, that we can feel like a man or feel like a woman, and that's what's important in determining who we are. So of course that redefines quite fundamentally what it means to be gay. To be gay no longer means being same-sex attracted, or being a lesbian no longer means being same-sex attracted. It comes to mean being redefined as attracted to somebody of the same gender identity. And this takes us to some very regressive and very backward areas. I mean, it suggests that lesbian women should be sleeping with, having sex with biological males.
Because they identify as women?
Who identify as women, precisely.
That's not going to go. That's not going to work.
Well, no.
Not that I know anything about this.
But there's terrible pressure on lesbian women to conform and get in line with this, and it's almost as if they're racist or prejudiced, bigoted by not.
I'll come. There's so much more we can say, but let me stay on this for a moment. Can you help me here? Why? I understand that the phenomenon of sexual dysphoria, when someone has a deep sense of themselves being not the sex of their body, or their body, and I think that's important. And I've seen people deal with that in certain ways. But what I can't understand is where did it come about this massive intolerance of the questioning of transgender issues? That's not the same as believing in transgenderism, but why suddenly everybody so totally, not everybody, many people, because it can't be everybody, so deeply intolerant in this area? It seems to be an area marked of the lack of civility, the lack of interest in reason. Can you help me to tell me what? I take it that's woke.
Yes, you mean why
you're in Howard one, so tell me why has that happened?
Why are people intolerant of transgender people? Is that what you're asking?
No, why are people intolerant of questioning of transgender people?
I see.
I mean, the real intolerance, as far as I can see, is, and it's all over the place. You're transphobic by asking a question. I didn't know where the energy is coming from.
Yes. Well, I think
and it seemed for me, it just suddenly popped up.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier about this construction of hierarchies of privilege and oppression, and transgender people have been placed right at the very, very top of this pyramid as being the most oppressed group.
So it's not about transgenderism in itself. It's about another scheme.
Yeah, I think it is about transgenderism as well.
Where the victim is. So we have a culture which holds that the victim is to be specially cared for.
Absolutely.
Which, of course, goes right back, if I say so, to the Christian depths in the Western culture.
Yeah.
That's not the way Roman would think.
No, absolutely.
They thought the victims deserve it. That was the classical view of the world.
Yeah.
But this has now been detached from its framework and is now running it wild. So if I can be a victim, I deserve special care. Now, what's wrong with that?
Well, because I don't think transgender people are victims. I think this whole construction of hierarchies in that way is very artificial.
You don't think black people are victims then? In other words, you're against not caring for victims, but who's counting as a victim? Is that your point?
Well, I think we have too much emphasis on victimhood in our society. I think we overemphasize vulnerability as a psychological state in a way that defies reality. I prefer to see people as being generally quite robust. I mean, clearly there are people who do have mental health problems, and there are some people who genuinely do have special needs that society has a duty to care for.
You're concerned.
But I think your average person is probably a lot more mentally robust than we're given credit for nowadays.
Right, so you're afraid that talking to victims creates a situation where you depower people from their lives.
Yes.
A good thing gone too far is having a deleterious effect.
I think so, and I think the problem is when we present ourselves to the world as being vulnerable, the demand is not that we are powerful people who can exercise agency and take control over our lives, but the demand is that somebody else must come in and speak on our behalf, that we must be better looked after. And I think that creates all kinds of problems politically. I mean, nobody ever gets anything in life by asking for somebody to look after them. You know, you might get a bit of special treatment, but you certainly don't have the agency to take control and to really change the world for the better.
So you're worried about that the woke is in fact creating people with less agency.
It is on the one hand, but I think the flip side of that is it massively empowers, and this is an irony, it massively empowers a kind of elite professional class, a milieu of a kind of professional managerial class, if you like, who are able to manage this system and dish out
the endless growth of HR departments.
Absolutely, and this is where your equality, diversity, inclusivity
Oh yes, there's a whole industry, I believe.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. So you get this section of society who become massively empowered by everybody else being treated as victims.
Now, you're not telling me how they're won. We know what, I understand your critique of woke. I'm not sure it has it won, and how? What was your answer to the how?
Yeah. So answer to the how is that I think this outlook on life has become so massively dominant within our institutions. So you've just made reference yourself to the HR departments, but I think this has become almost the guiding philosophy behind many private sector corporations.
No, I agree with that. I agree. I like it. How did they get the power?
I see, yes.
What did they do, what others not do to get them thinking this way? That's my concern.
Yes, absolutely. So I think in some ways it's not a representation of how powerful woke thinking is in its own terms, but it's almost as if we've lost as a culture a sense of purpose in what institutions should be for. And I think that really stretches beyond so many areas of our society. It's almost as if it's not enough for a school, for example, to focus on education.
Which is your area.
Yes, yeah, or for universities to focus upon teaching subject knowledge, or for hospitals to cure sick people, or for businesses to make money. It's almost as if we're a bit embarrassed about those fundamental sense of purpose that should drive institutions or businesses. And so we've then opened the door for new ideologies and new political purposes to kind of march straight in. If a university department, for example, says we're a bit embarrassed about teaching English literature, we think the canon is perhaps a bit colonial and a bit white and Western, you open the door for other people to then come in and say, well, hang on, why don't we do this instead?
So you think it's a failure of nerve in some sense?
Absolutely, but very deep-rooted. You know, I don't think this is a new thing. I think this extends way back to the kind of latter half of the last century, where there's a failure of nerve, a failure of a sense of purpose, a failure of commitment to what we would have termed as Enlightenment values.
You see, that's interesting. It's late last century. That late last century was marked by the collapse of communism.
Yes, absolutely.
You think that plays a role?
I do think that plays a role, because I think what happened with the collapse of communism was we thought it meant victory for the West initially. You know, we thought that it meant that Western values had won out over the communist East. But then we realised, it seems to me, this is kind of 1990s, that we needed the communist bloc in order to define our own sense of purpose, our own sense of who we were and what we stood for.
So take away the other,
Absolutely.
we're a bit lost.
We're then left with, what do we mean? What do we stand for? It was easy for us to define ourselves in opposition to them over there. When we no longer have them over there, we are then having to look inwards for our sense of purpose.
Can I raise another issue which I think does play a role? There's been, as I understand things, an embarrassment in the West, maybe since about our colonial past.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true.
Right,
Hey, I just wanted to pop up and remind you to hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon. It really helps us to grow this channel and continue to share good ideas. And don't forget, you can become a member and find exclusive content at our website, cis.org.au. Enjoy the rest of your video.
Now, the actual facts about colonialism are up to dispute. Nigel Biggar's book, for example, although nuance is not what you get. But now, anti-colonialism has been there since the early 20th century, but something has happened where the West itself has kind of become embarrassed with its past, or having trouble coming to terms with its past. Do you think this is what's been going on as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree that there were atrocities committed during the colonial period, and there were
not just that. It was based upon the belief that some people were inferior to other people. That's why
absolutely,
we right
absolutely. I mean, this is the roots of what we did term at one point scientific racism,
yes,
kind of grounded in biology, and I really do think there's some very, very terrible things, and I wouldn't want to be Panglossian about this and suggest that everything was wonderful in the past. But I think the problem is in what we do nowadays is we focus just on the bad things.
What's the opposite of Panglossianism?
I guess extreme pessimism or negativity. But we give children, I think, a very unbalanced view now.
Yes, indeed.
But in the opposite direction, equally as unbalanced probably as they got in Victorian times, that everything was wonderful. Now,
well, I'm not sure. Actually, that's not true. There was critiques within. I mean, the past much. Yeah, there were critiques then about these issues. It was, after all, in not quite the Victorian times, the Regency period, where slavery was abolished by the United Kingdom, by the West. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a sign of growth. Do you think there might? I mean, the wonderful thing about history is it never stops. So think about today. There's always tomorrow, if you follow me. Do you think this woke thing is going to keep going up, or is it going to? Will we get to peak woke?
I hope so.
Well, I know you hope so, but
I think there's already signs that people are questioning this and falling out of love with identity politics. And I think you see a very, very good example here in Australia with the rejection of the voice.
Voice to Parliament and the executive government, referendum was just held just recently from our time of recording, yes.
And it seems to me that was a questioning of identity politics, questioning of some identities being given a differential status to other identities.
Certainly, I mean, yes, you're right. That was quite a complex thing. I spoke to a friend of mine recently about, I think, his university, and all the discussion was about transgender and gay rights, right? Now, I mean, fair enough. Let's just grant for a moment their marginalisation. But I can't imagine in 20 years' time they're still going on about it. I just can't see that this is my Boredom view of history, which I mentioned. You just think, look, frankly, we're just sick of it, man. Let's find something else. Do you think that is there something in that? Will boredom, you think, be a hope for the world?
Well, possibly. I mean, I wouldn't rely on it, though. I think you'd have to be quite a positive person to simply hope that boredom alone will be enough to challenge these trends. But I do think that there is scope for challenging. I mean, I think one parallel with The Voice and kind of broader wokeism and identity politics, I saw a graph. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've not been in Australia long, but I saw a graph that showed a polling in relation to how people intended to vote prior to the referendum. And it showed that at the beginning, when this first started to be raised, a lot of people were very in favour.
Yes.
The more people have found out about it, the more they disliked it.
Well, also the more they found not out about it, actually. One of the troubles was, it was we felt very good about doing something, but then when the something was, hang on, I'm not sure that's the something we should do.
Absolutely, or the more it was discussed, let's say.
I wonder whether the reality is on your side. That is, there's some incoherencies in some of the concepts that are present with woke that just simply, upon a reflection, that can't be right.
Absolutely. No, I think this is true because I think exactly the same graph could be drawn around transgender, for example. So if you'd said to me, even just a few years ago, should transgender women have the same rights as women? I think I probably would have said yes, of course, because I'm embarrassed to admit I don't think I'd properly thought about it that much. But then when you actually spell out to people, well, transgender women are male, they may be male people who have not undergone any surgery or done anything to change their identity other than simply said, I'm a woman. Should these male-bodied people be allowed into women's refuges, women's hospital wards, women's
But also
prisons?
the very question, is a woman, a transgender woman is a woman, a real woman. The words of woman no longer have any, they become unstable in meaning.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a point in which I don't know. I just think it's a point in which you look back and think, what were we thinking? And I wonder if wokeism is, and it's also, wokeism is most prevalent in those people who are so intelligent only they could think of such silly things. University departments, the elites, there's a common...
What concerns me is that this is shaping so much of the education that's going on in our school system nowadays. Okay. So young children, I'm on about from the ages of 4, 5, 6, are absorbing this as if it is fact.
Oh, I see.
And I think you're going to see some real sharp generational divides in the way people see the world. Certainly young teenagers I know have swallowed a lot of this through their personal social health education classes at school, through the books, through the television programs they watch, and most importantly of all, through social media they consume, the TikTok videos they watch. And they have developed this outlook on the world where what worries me is that it's not even seen as an opinion or an outlook. They take the statement trans women are women as a statement of fact.
Yes, well, that's very it's unsophisticated.
Yeah.
If I put that way, the idea that sentence, and I mean, there are other things, part of which are just simply an obvious truth. Then by no means, it may be true, but it's certainly not an obvious truth of fact. No. Well, do you have any hope? I mean, you've been depressing me here, Joanna.
Sorry.
Yes, I don't know why I got you in, but...
So I do have hope, and my hope, like I say, is such as with the Voice referendum, and we've had quite considerable pushback against transgender ideology in the UK, I'm pleased to say.
It's damaging to people, many things damaging to people.
It is, but for me it comes with two things. I mean, the first, I think, is the importance of free speech. And I genuinely believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant. The more we make clear to people what these ideas mean, what this actually represents in practice, how your life will change if this happens, then people are not stupid. As soon as you make clear to people, you take away the rubbish, if you like, and spell out people properly what this means, people don't buy it. People are not daft, and people are
This is my realism point.
Absolutely. And then the other thing you need to go along with free speech, of course, is democracy. Again, exactly as you saw with the Voice referendum, we need to say to people, actually put it to the public. Do you want hospital wards and prisons to be single sex, i.e. only for female women? Or should this be based on gender identity? Should male-bodied people who identify as women
So what you're saying, but that's implying, which I think is the case, that may not be the case if your point of education is true, that things you're worried about are a minority, or at least not everybody, there is a kind of still solid,
I think there is, yes.
Could I add a third one? Overreach. Right. I think it was Napoleon said, never interfere with your enemy when he's making a mistake. Some of the reactions, like J.K. Rowling, reaction against her, I'm not really fond of that, to be frank with you. But I thought, that can't be right.
No.
Even if she's wrong. Even if she's wrong, that can't be right.
No, absolutely.
And so the overreaction will sooner or later create a backlash.
I think this is absolutely true. But again, I wouldn't rely on it. But
I'm not relying on anything. I can't rely on the future. I've got to just deal with it.
But the principle, I think, is true. So one example from the UK, the Scottish Parliament was trying to push through gender self-identification so that you could sit here now and say, I'm a woman, and I would have to refer to you as she and her. And then, kind of 1 week after this debate broke open, there was a vile rapist, male rapist, who suddenly identified as a woman and wanted to be put in a women's prison, expected to be housed in a women's prison, having been found guilty of these atrocious crimes. And suddenly the penny dropped with a lot of people. This is the reality of gender self-identification.
It's caused trouble for the Chief Minister, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, yes. It led to her resignation. So I think there's certainly...
That's my point about overreach.
Absolutely. And right. This is me. I'm completely agreeing with you. It gets the point
when it looks for... What may have some truth in it becomes silly.
Yes.
If not silly, scary.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. So, but I'm very torn on the big question of has woke won? I mean, obviously, I've titled my book How Woke
You're being
Won.
slightly sensational. I think we must admit that.
Well, no, because I think there are two ways of looking at it. I don't think it's won in the general population. I think you're absolutely right. There's a majority of the public that have enough common sense to completely see through the rubbish that this is.
But in your field, which is university and school education.
University and schools, but also, more to the point, I think it's won in all our major institutions. Right. I think it's one in the workplace, in the private sector. I mean, you walk down a high street in the UK in June and you just see kind of festooned with pride flags. You know, you've got Pride Month, you've got Black History Month, you know, you've got when I go to post a letter, I just want to post a letter, and what I've got is the post service ramming down my throat the fact that they're celebrating Pride. I couldn't care less whether they're celebrating Pride.
That's probably another example of overreach, when the post office is telling you what to think about, about ethics.
But it's
you're
not
in trouble.
The post office, it's the train companies, it's the banks, it's the shops, it's everywhere. So I think woke has won in the sense that it's dominating our institutions.
It's dominating our physical environment.
Absolutely.
Well, Joanna Williams, I hope to get you back on Liberalism in Question when you publish your next book, How Woke Was Beaten.
Watch this space.
Thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure.
I'm Rob Forsyth. There's another edition in the podcast series from the Centre of Independent Studies called Liberalism in Question. Thanks for watching.
It really helps us to spread the ideas of liberty when you hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon. I'll see you in the comment section.